careful not to
Bump these around too much. Steady.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Clap.
We have no idea if it worked or not.
Doesn't matter. Test the system.
What do we do now?
You need to get that on
Is
mic.
it me, I guess?
Do you want it to be? Do you want it to be me?
I don't know what I want.
Hey guys, welcome to this
So
podcast.
Jake's a little scared right now. He'll be right with you, but I'll get us started. No, it won't.
Hello. I'm Jake.
I'm Peyton.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Wes.
And this podcast.
Do it again.
This podcast is not for you.
Round table.
YouTube exclusive edition. Now, if you are watching on YouTube, you can see that we have a board game in front of us. If you're listening, we have a board game in front of us. It is the board game Red Rising by Stonemaier Games. It just came out
A few months ago, 3 months.
3 months ago, and it is, I would say it was a collaboration between Stonemaier and Pierce Brown, I suppose,
yeah.
right? So Red Rising, if you don't know what it is, Red Rising is a sci-fi fantasy series. I guess I was going to say trilogy, but it's not anymore.
Yeah.
Book series.
Book series by Pierce Brown, author Pierce Brown. The first one came out probably 8 or 9 years ago, and bada bing, bada boom, everyone loved it. He has since written 2 more Red Rising sequels and then 2 additional Red Rising world novels.
Yes. 6th one inbound at some point.
That he's said that for a long time. So yes. Now I have read all the books multiple times. Natty, you
Working on the 5th one right
he's
now.
working on the 5th one currently. And so I was a huge Red Rising fan. I love Red Rising. It is it's about this main character. His name is Darrow. My buddy was listening to the audiobook and he says Darrow, which is such a shame. So I'm going to call him Darrow. Darrow is the lowest of the low type of thing. In this world, society is classed by colors. Now, this isn't really race related. It's just color coding, I guess,
Totally, yeah.
of social status. So every color, red, yellow, blue, orange, obsidian, gray, green, all the way up to gold. It's a social ladder. And so the book is about Darrow. He is a red, which is the lowest social class of people, and trying to overthrow the class system.
Is he trying to rise?
The color
Might
is
be.
rising, actually.
Oh.
So...
So
Why don't you
no.
cool it? Yeah,
Okay.
why
Why
don't
don't
you
you
cool
shut
it,
up?
all right?
All right.
When we
Shut up.
get to the board game, Mr. 320 points, you can talk,
I was
okay?
just asking.
We're not here until the board game starts.
Oh, okay.
So-
I'll just edit us out of the video.
That would be fun.
Just empty chairs.
So it's kind of it's about that, and so I loved it. I thought the books were great. When this got announced, I think we immediately texted each other and were
Super
like,
excited,
"Oh
yeah.
my gosh!"
Yeah.
Because I think Stonemaier is one of the most unique publishers and designers popping right now.
For sure. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the game. Unless you have anything else to add about the series itself.
No,
We can talk about the series, obviously.
totally, yeah. I
how it
think
works
for the
with the
most
game.
part, the cast color system is really everything you need to know to, I guess, even appreciate this game a little bit, because that's
Yeah.
really what's played on here.
Yeah, for
Yep.
sure. That's heavy in it. So I'm not sure. We'll switch to the game now. I'm not sure what genre. Deck drafting?
It's hand management.
Hand management.
Yeah.
So drafting is not this at all, even though you're swapping and taking cards.
Right. Drafting is typically I would pass my hand to you and you could pick from it. And
Oh,
I would do vice
strange.
versa. Right.
So this is hand management.
Right. Yeah.
Handagement.
If you will.
Handagement. This is a
It
new-
sounds like the most boring way to describe a game, but they're
Yeah.
fun games.
Yes.
Like I've played other ones
Yeah.
like it, but yeah.
This is a handagement game from Stonemaier. And I guess now that we're going to get into the game, I should say, again, if you've listened to our board game reviews before, Jamie at Stonemaier, super great supporter of board games in general and the podcast. And so he sent us this copy. We are not obligated to say anything great about it. We're not obligated to say that it's amazing. You should go buy it. None of this is endorsed by them. But I will say thank you to them for sending this copy, no strings attached, which I really appreciate. So let's talk about the first time we played it. I think that'd be a good place to start, unless you want to describe how to play it first. Should we go, how do you play it, or these were our first thoughts?
I would say a quick synopsis of the game would make sense.
Someone should do a quick synopsis of the game.
Can we call somebody? To do a
that's
quick
why we have this guy here.
This is our special guest, Nathan Morris.
That's why we're paying them the big bucks.
He is a board game enthusiast, very large collection. He was on our Between Two Castles episode. So he was on our board game Best of 2020 episode, him and his wife. It's one of your favorite hobbies, right?
Yeah.
So
He's the expert.
yes.
That's
So
why we bring him in.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Also,
we're so happy.
sweet. Well,
I really am. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
you should do your
Every
job.
time you describe a game, it seems way more interesting than when other people describe it.
sweet. Well,
It's way
pressure
better
on-
when you
I'll-
actually start
I'll do my
describing it.
best.
So
Okay, so in this game, it's super simple. You're going to start with a hand of cards, 5 cards, and on your turn, you can really do one of 2 things. Now, there's going to be a board. If you can see on the video, it's right here. And if you're listening, just pretend there's a board right here. And the board's going to have 4 different rows. And on my turn, I can choose to place a card on a row. And each one of these rows is going to give me a special benefit that's going to give me points. But when I place a card down, I can take one up from another row. And so that's going to change what I've got in my hand. And I'm scoring at the end of the game what's in my hand. So I'm trying to fine tune that to give me the most points possible. The other thing that you can do if you're pretty comfortable with what you've got in your hand is you can do something called Scout. There's a giant deck of cards in the middle of the board. You can take one, flip it over onto one of the rows, take that benefit, but you don't get another card in that situation. So just really quick, each one of the rows is going to give you a few different, or it's going to give you one thing. So if you play it on the Jupiter row, you're going to move your little ship up these points, this point track, and it's going to increase incrementally. Whoever's got the most at the end is just going to have the most points. If you go to Mars, you're going to get these little red rubies called helium. Each one of these is going to be worth points
ASMR
at the end.
Helium.
Yeah. If you go to Luna, you're going to get to take the Sovereign token. This gives you various things that you can do, but it's going to be worth 10 points at the end of the game. And then if you go to the Institute, everybody's got 10 cubes, and you can put one of your cubes in there. And whoever's got the most cubes in the end
influence cubes.
is going to get the most points there. So it's just various ways to get points.
So there's 3 tracks, essentially.
Yes.
To get to the end game, there's 3 tracks. One of them was this, which isn't really a track itself.
Yes.
But that's how you use those resources, right? Is
Right. Yes.
moving up those 3 tracks.
Yeah, and it's all point based. Now, the star of the game is really going to be your hands, and just like Jake mentioned earlier, there's 14 different colors that you can kind of try and build a hand around. So one of your pink cards might say, this is worth 20 points if it's with a red card. And so throughout the game, you might say, okay, I'm going to try and look for red cards to pair with my pink card. So that means I don't need this yellow card. And so you're just trying to build the best possible hand that's going to give you the most points, because there are a lot of cards in the game that say if this is paired with this color or with this name, it's going to be worth incrementally more points. So throughout the rounds of the game, you're really just trying to fine tune your hand as best you can to produce the most points at the end of the game.
Yes.
I think that's a great synopsis right there.
Yeah, and I
Really concise. Good
I
job.
will say
You're a pro.
the coolest part about the integration with the world is the complicated scoring system.
Yeah.
And it's not complicated, but the convoluted. If this is with this, then this gets this. And
It's the interconnectedness of the cards
yes,
specifically.
yeah. I think in terms of the book working with the game, I think that's the strongest area of it actually doing what the book does.
Totally. Yeah.
Because in the books, in the world, violet people have a role, green have a role, and so
But they do have to work together a
uh,
little bit, or no?
they either like to or they
Right, because there's certain cards that work with others, and there's others that are actually a negative with
Yeah.
different ones, right?
And so that's based on character choices,
Yep.
which is really cool. That's based on like certain moments in the books that happen when a certain green works really well with a certain silver or something. And I think that's the strongest, like where they're gelling, I guess, where the game is gelling with the IP.
Totally.
Because a lot of times it can be a gimmick, and in this one specifically, I think Jamie did such a good job of, and it show his love for the series shows.
It's really
I think
well
in those
researched.
moments.
Yeah. I think he said it's one of his favorite IPs of all
Yeah.
time, and you can tell from that.
I will say, having no knowledge of the book, no knowledge of any of that came across that kind of hierarchy of class came across very clearly, I think, in the cards. Like,
Especially with the golds. I think
yeah,
they're
when I got a
very
gold or a
very
white card, I
strongly-
was like, oh, these are people that are like
right
better.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you look at even that white one that you have there, like, there's something different about that kind of character. You can immediately tell by looking at the cards, and the art of the characters, I think, communicates it very well too. So me having zero knowledge of the property, I feel like I got a glimpse as to what the property is like.
Yeah.
Well, that's
having played
awesome.
this game.
Yeah.
Totally.
Now, has Stonemaier done a game on something that, like a previously existing IP
Like
before?
an IP.
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to think of something that wasn't
The
original.
Dune one
at
was
least
someone else,
a
right?
partnership
Correct.
with
Yeah.
them.
And that's what I think I remember, like, being so, it was such a weird mix of emotion when they announced this game, because it was like I'd never been waiting for a board game to come out.
Totally.
I love Stonemaier games, and this is like arguably my favorite book series of all time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, the chances of this actually happening are insane. And I was just like, what?
Yeah,
So
got very lucky that you
yeah,
reached out to Stonemaier to like try and review game and like
it's
had
such
a conversation
yeah.
with the guy,
Yeah.
and then this happens.
Yeah. So I was excited to play it, and I was trying not to well, let's just go to first playthrough thoughts. I was trying not to see it through rose-tinted glasses, because I wanted it to be awesome. And this is not the direction I would have taken it.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
From a gameplay or from a design perspective, it's extremely abstract.
Mm-hmm.
Like if this didn't have the theme on it, you could pretty easily put another theme on there.
Be
and you
anything.
can-
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. But I really enjoyed it the first 3 times, I think. Actually, the more I played it, the more I enjoyed it, I guess would be a better way to say it. The first time I was like, I had Darrow's card, and that was cool, right? But it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. This does not feel like Red Rising. I was kind of let down, but every time I played it more, the enjoyment level went up, and the care and the affection that was shown making the game really started coming through.
What do you think would have made it feel like Red Rising? Like, what do you think was missing?
That's the thing, is I don't think anything
Was it combat, or was it like some kind
probably
Yeah.
honestly but I think that's what's so great about Stonemaier is that's really Jamie's, I guess I say Jamie, but Stonemaier most of the time is you're playing against other people but not directly.
Yep.
And so that's what was so intriguing about them publishing this, is like, wow, what are they going to do? Because most of the time it's so passive. It's like, I'm having a great time over on my little island, and at the end of the game, we'll see how we all did. But Red Rising, specifically, the first book, is so me versus you. I will cut your throat to get ahead.
Yeah.
And so this is just not the direction I would have taken it. And I was, if I'm being honest, I was let down the first couple times I played it. Yeah.
And honestly, especially because he developed Scythe, which I think we've all played at this point.
I've not been able to play it yet.
Okay. Well, it feels like it's pretty ripe for like implementation of this onto that, like even if it was just a paste over, because there is some combat in that. There is like machinations where you're trying to get
a map.
Totally.
Yeah. That was my first initial thought, is it's insanely like it's a roundabout way of Red Rising.
But it would also not be very Stonemaier-y to paste it over a property that they've
that's
done
true.
before.
Totally.
That's true.
Because they're very much like the 3 or 4 games I've played by them, they're different from each other. Like, there's common threads in how you play the game.
Yeah.
like on a very like big scale.
Yeah.
But like this is completely different than the other ones that I've played by them.
I'll just say my first impression from playing, first time we played it, Jake got a collector's edition, which I thought it had a few different editions. Like some of the cards had some different art and gold. Like the gold card, I think all of the gold cards have foil on them, and the pieces are metal. I think entirely metal. And I really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it every time I've played it, but I also had no expectations. I love you have a different hand every game, and all of these characters are brand new to me. So it's cool to come to it kind of cold and seeing what colors, developing my own idea of what colors represent what abilities and stuff like that.
Totally.
Green, they're like tech people, and I didn't know that obviously beforehand, and but it's cool to see those.
That's exactly what.
That's it. I'm trying to think of another one that's out there, but I can't. But I had a blast every time I've played it. So
you guys didn't feel like not having a handle of the source material decreased your enjoyment of it at all?
No, just because there isn't like character description that you have to read.
Yeah.
It's just their ability.
Right.
So there's no like backstory really. I mean, you've got the name and the color, and that's pretty much it. Now, what they pair with does connect to the books, I think, right?
Yes.
But that's just to be inferred. That's not something that you have to know.
And you can get it.
You just know that this
knowing
card
that
matches
they
with
connect.
that card.
Yeah.
Or in like Wingspan, if you have this bird in this habitat, you get this. Like I don't. Okay, but Zach is
would
like,
know.
that's so cool. You know, it's like, oh, okay, yeah.
I think for my first playthrough, I felt very similar to you, Jake. I was expecting something, and I feel like we had both kind of been keeping up on this game. Like we watched like a video on how it plays.
Diaries and stuff.
Yeah, totally. And so I think we both kind of knew what to expect going into it. But at the same time, essentially, if I'm going to be like really, like if I'm going to reduce it down, you're playing cards and you're moving up on tracks. And I feel like there's something that you have to give a little bit. You have to suspend your disbelief just a bit to like join the theme and this specific game. And so I was pretty let down too. But like you, the more I played it, the more I enjoyed it too. And I mean, a huge part of that for me is because this is an enormous deck, and you're never going to see all of them on several playthroughs, you know. So there's a lot of variety there.
Yeah.
I have
Mr. 320 points, Wes Walker, ladies and gentlemen.
I have only played it once.
We'll have to put that in the description.
And
you write that down on your log? I know you weren't there, but I think
you need to. It needs to be like.
I only played it once. We played it like a week ago, and I really enjoyed it.
Of course you did.
I didn't know I was winning.
Absolutely smashed everyone. It was so fun.
I didn't know that that's how much I was getting.
Yeah.
But as I was playing it, I was like, I feel like I'm doing well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this hand works well together, and I got that probably 20 minutes into playing the game.
Yeah.
I had a good grasp on like, I think looking at all the cards out here and what they're worth, looking at what I have in my hand and how they interlock, I think I'm doing well.
Yeah, you scouted for the last hour of the game.
Yeah. I really did. But I got it very quickly, and I really enjoyed how the cards interlocked, and like a card by itself barely, like it's essentially useless.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it has 15 points or whatever, but if you don't take advantage of the things that add the bonuses, you're wasting a card essentially.
Yeah.
So like,
I found myself barely ever looking at the base score of a card. Like I totally forget that they're worth points on their own.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I liked the different ways. Like, the different tracks are essentially just kind of variations on the same way to get points.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just taking a thing and that's worth some points, or you're putting a thing and that's worth some points, or you're moving a thing and that's worth some points. It's very minimal difference.
Yeah.
But there is an element of like, especially with the Institute and this one, I think less so the Helium, you're against one another if you're the person leading, then there's some other things that kick in. Or if you're in
based on
second,
the cards.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Or like in the institute, if you have the most in the institute, you get more points per square or whatever. Those things I thought were really good. There's subtle differences, but they feel like differences.
Yeah.
But having not read the book at all, coming into this completely cold, I had zero expectations. I really enjoyed it a lot, and that is completely separate from the fact that I won, honestly, because I didn't know I was going to.
It always is.
We counted up the points.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really have a frame of reference of how. I think I asked you guys partway through how much is a good score.
Yeah.
I was like 190. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. You said I scored 170 last game, and that wasn't bad.
And I was like, okay. So
Oh, yeah, so double that. I should be fine.
it made me want to read the book even more, which I've wanted to for a while. I was
Right.
reading Dune, which
Yeah.
got in the way of me starting this because Dune
Ever
took 6
anything.
months.
Yeah.
But it made me want to know more about the property too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it a lot.
What would we say our favorite parts of it are? Maybe we touched on them a little bit. I guess
Yeah.
one of my favorite parts is as a fan of the material, and it's hard to. I guess I keep bringing it up, but it's hard to separate. So I think that's what's great about our perspectives is, we have two people that are big fans. We have two that have little to no knowledge of the material, and so I think that's great. Probably my favorite part is, it's hard. I wonder if there are games like this that aren't Stonemaier for me, but he's one of the only. This publisher is one of the only companies that can consistently make games where playing it is fun. Because most of the time, like I said, I've said this on our board game episodes before, winning is fun. And so I don't really care about, like, I will know if I had fun at the end of the night. Did I win? Dude, that was so fun. Did I lose? That was a waste of time. Yeah. I hate my life. But Stonemaier consistently, it's what you're doing is so entertaining or engaging or almost puzzle-like.
Yeah.
Totally.
Figuring out the cards in this game is sort of puzzle-like.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, if I get this and I put this there,
Right.
then that'll do. And so you're playing a game and thinking through your possibilities coming down the road.
I think that's my favorite part. I think when you absolutely smashed us. Now, I had one of my best scores of all time, and it was overshadowed completely by the fact that you scored something that none of us had ever seen ever. And so that it was a great example because I wasn't fuming all the way on the drive home. I was like, dude, that was fun. And I lost, and it's like it seems like every time I play a Stonemaier game, it's like what I'm doing.
Wingspan is that way too.
Exactly.
Like,
and so I think
the journey.
If I think every single Stonemaier game I've played thus far, it feels that way.
Yep.
And it's easy to say, this is just fun. We're just playing a game. No, it's not. But this, it's like, no, my dude, I have like freaking Cassius and Karnas together. Like that's so cool. It's like, I don't know. Anyway, for me, I think that'd probably be my favorite part.
To me, it's and this is the same with all of his games. In-game scoring is really fun to me. I don't know why. And that's tied to that is, it's specific. Tied to that is like just the crazy things that you can do with. So the anatomy of the card, there's the top score, the base score that the card's worth, but there's also the in-game scoring that only triggers at the end when you've got your finished hand. So building those and then scoring them, that was always the most fun to me. And it was the same way with Wingspan. You get in-game scoring in Wingspan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those, because even if you don't, and I think it's part of what you're saying is like, even if you were going to lose, you feel like you've got a chance. Like you feel like you're playing pretty well because at least your cards are like kind of connected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's my favorite.
And you don't really have any idea how anybody else is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
you can kind of tell by the tracks and stuff.
But their hand, it's complete mystery.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
that's my favorite part is the in-game scoring.
You might have, if he hadn't scored what he scored, you might have won. But because on your hand, you got to draw a few more cards at the end of the game based on one of your...
There's some fun, like, chance cards
Yeah.
at the end
Yeah.
that you can get. Those are always fun.
And even his, like he also
I
had
got
a,
one
he got
late
one
in
that
the
scored
game.
45 points.
Yeah, I
because
got one late in the
yeah.
game that was like pick a gold card out of the discard thing,
Yeah,
and it gave me 45 more points.
they're banished.
Sorry,
Right,
banished.
Yeah.
Read the book.
Sorry.
Why don't you?
People get banished in it? All right, I'm going to start reading
Spoilers.
it.
Dude, whoa, hey man, spoilers.
Let's see. For me, I mean, we've already touched on this a lot, but the card crafting, how they meticulously designed all of these cards, with such an enormous deck, with some of these cards that are like, you have to have somebody of this name. You'd think you'd never ever be able to score that card, but there are things that are planted in the deck that are like, well, you can count this card for any name or something. So the cards are just like a work of genius. I feel like I cannot imagine how much work must have gone in here to make this synchronized.
balance it, yeah.
Absolutely. But one of the things I didn't think about until you said this, Jake, even if you have, I've had some games of this where it's kind of like, I'm like, okay, well, I cannot get ahead. Like there are just some times where it's just like, yikes, this is bad. Not the game, but my game of this is not going well. But what's really interesting about this game is that you always have to be observant regardless, because what anybody else does in the game can give you that thing where you're like, okay, well, now I've got a foothold, because people are constantly playing cards down. So regardless of, man, I feel like I like my hand, or I feel like I really need to construct this, everybody's turn is going to contribute to that in some way, because you're constantly putting cards down. So you just have to be attentive. And I love that. I like games where on your turn, I'm not just like checking my phone because you're going to be messing around for 10 minutes, you know, where we always have to watch it. So
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, I think Wingspan could be a little bit that way, where you're just like, all right, I'm waiting now for it to come back around to me. But this one, yeah, that's a really good point. I would say mine is similar to yours. The cards and the interlocking of the bonuses on each card and how one supports the other. And then if you're going for one, it's like this character has to be with these two characters, but if it's not with this one, you lose 45 points or whatever. Like all of that stuff is so interesting, and it made me want to see all of the other cards because I felt like I saw a fraction of them. And like I said, it's the first time I've played a video game that made me more interested in the what?
Huh?
Hmm?
I didn't say anything. You said video game.
What console was this on?
Did I say video game? It's the first time I played a board game that has made me very interested
in the video game.
in the video game
Dude,
adaptation.
the new
Which one?
tables processors, like the games look amazing on it.
But it made me interested
Feels
in the
so
property.
real.
It feels like I'm actually touching it right now.
But it made me interested in the property even more. And it was just fun. Like,
Yeah.
it was different. It has some elements of games that we've seen before of, like, managing a hand and all of that stuff. But, and it had unique scoring, I think, too.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I would say it was just a fun all around, having not any frame of reference. And I think a lot of IP games don't do that well.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like coming into playing, like, the Dune board game, like, Steph played it with us and she enjoyed it, but she was constantly like, who are the, like, what is this?
Same thing with Back to the Future and Jaws, kind of.
Yeah.
So this is maybe what you were feeling of, like, this is not what I would go with Red Rising game.
Right.
Made it more accessible to people that aren't familiar with the property. Because, like, Dune, like, other games like that are a little bit obtuse if you don't have some background, or there's 3 paragraphs in the instruction manual on the story.
Yeah.
But this, I didn't feel like I needed that at all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I think it's really interesting that, like, an entry into the hobby board game scene is now an entryway into an IP. And, like, I've seen this game on the shelves at Target now, you know, like it's being sold in mass markets now. So I wonder how many other people are going to be introduced to it through a card game.
Right. The only reason I had ever heard of Red Rising was because of Jake. And it sounded interesting, and just like the sentence pitch he gave to me at one point. But this game just like pushed me further toward, hey, you should probably read this because I think you would like it.
And it's cool because most of the time it's usually a television show or movie
Right.
that brings people to it, or vice versa.
I can't think of a single like IP board game that has ever like sparked interest in reading a book. For me.
That's true. Nice job, Jamie. You're not going to watch this or listen, but nice job. Critiques. I have a couple, but if someone else wants to go first.
One thing I was going to say about how you were thinking like maybe a combat mechanism might have worked. I think it's in there. It's just more subtle because multiple times during the game I was like, crap, Peyton banished an entire row
yes, he did.
Of the game. And there was like
Reaper over there.
I was playing so bad. I was like, I got to play spoiler at this point.
We had
multiple times.
We had a deck of like 30 banished cards.
Yeah.
But I feel like that aspect of the game is in there. It's just not direct.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was one thing that I wanted to say before I forgot about it with the combat thing. But I think maybe a little bit more in your face, like being able to take cards from people or something would be good, even though there is a little bit of that. Like, yay, that person to your left banish a card or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say, every time you do it, you also have to give something up.
Right.
Or, so it's like...
So something to like knock people down on a track or like remove something from scoring might be interesting. But it didn't take away from the game.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have thought about like, this is missing a combat element until you mentioned it.
Yeah.
What are yours, Jakey?
Critiques?
What are yours? Yeah.
In these critiques, I'm trying to keep, because if we go down the rabbit hole of what I would have wanted, that would never end. Yeah. So board game specific critiques, just the gameplay, I would say, I think the deck is a little too big. I think I've never played a game with 4 people though. So that could have something to do with it. You'd get that many more cards in circulation, but I don't think.
How many can you play with?
It's just 6. Yeah,
6.
It's 2 to 6. 1
that would
to
be
6,
insane.
I guess.
Okay.
6 people.
But yeah, I think that would be a critique. I think at the beginning of every game, as a mega fan, I'm not familiar enough with any of the cards after I've played this many times to know what I'm going to do, ever. Every time I start the game, I'm like, I have no idea what to do. And it's like, I don't like that. I think that's, in my opinion, I think that's a bad thing to not have any strategy, like, at the start of the game. And maybe the tiles are supposed to set your strategy for you.
Yeah.
I think my second critique would be that I think the tiles are unbalanced. I think some of them are OP and some of them are borderline not good. And that
he's talking about the character tiles, the house tiles that you have. It's your special ability that no one else has.
So whenever
I didn't use mine like halfway through the game because I didn't realize it was doing much at all. It didn't seem like it. So yeah, no, I was just going to mention that. Like I had this one, I think, to take this token
and roll the dice.
Yeah. Which I wasn't utilizing for half of the game.
And I will say, like, I don't know, maybe and that could be a part where he's trying to incorporate the book really well, and it just doesn't play that well. But are we going to pretend that looking at a card is the same thing as advancing on the fleet track?
Totally, right.
It's like, that's insane. Yeah. And so, I just got 8 more points, and you got to look at a card and place it so everyone else can take it now. Like, that does not seem balanced. Yeah. So I think that would be my biggest critique. I think the deck being a little too big is, well, play with 6 people and you'll be proven wrong. Okay, that's fair. I think the house tiles are unbalanced for sure. So, and they're random. That's the downside. So it's okay. Well, you got what is the Apollo? You got Apollo or Minerva. It's like,
you get to go first.
Cool, sweet.
But I mean, whenever we played, it might be telling that like I wasn't using my bonus until over halfway through the game, and I still won.
Yeah.
So it either points to them not being relevant enough, or Well, I mean, that's what I think it would point to. Is like they don't have as big of an impact as either they should to make them really necessary.
But
You know what I
also,
mean?
if we had more OP ones, then maybe it would have mattered. Me and Pate,
Yeah, maybe.
I guess. You know.
Which ones did you have? You had Jupiter and Mars.
I
whenever you guys
was
were playing.
Seriously?
I was
You
that
were
He was-
Minerva. I was Jupiter.
I was Mars.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I would say it's kind of the same thing, but I think it's a different. I think it would be a different critique in the sense of I don't think there's too many cards. I don't think there's enough card turnover. I think that's the problem. There's not enough cards in circulation, like moving through the game. I think, I guess either way, you're solving that problem, whether there's less cards or more circulation. I think it's harder to, you get your base hand, and you have to build it on something in your hand, essentially. You can't really you could get all new cards, but by that time, everyone's probably going to be close to the end of the game if you get all new cards, and you're going to be way behind.
Totally.
So you have to base it on something on your hand. And I think getting multiple cards is difficult. And I think it's a little too difficult, just barely.
Yeah.
But that's my one. The other thing is, and I think this is actually probably a positive, it's just a frustration, balancing I think the whole game revolves around, is this deployability better than the in-game ability? So you've got your regular ability that the card gives you and then the in-game. So you're trying to base like, I need this now, but is this better? And then that freezes you on some
Or can I
cards.
get it back?
Totally.
Yeah, or can you get it back?
Totally. Yeah.
Which I think you could look at it either way. I think most of the time it's a negative just because I'd like to be able to play this card. And I think, again, the card circulation is the dictator of all of that. If I knew I could get another card pretty easily, it'd be less of a risk of getting rid of it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, honestly, I'm kind of right there with you. I feel like my big critiques for this game almost completely revolve around the fact that there is so little card turnover, which sounds different from what I said before. But there does kind of hit a point in the game where if everybody's pretty happy with their hands, it's just kind of like you're recycling like the same bits, you know, unless people are scouting and then we've got new ones out there. I think that the root of that, what you're saying about having to build your combo off of a card, I actually really like that because it makes me feel like either I have to make the best out of a bad situation or I've got this crazy card. Wouldn't it be awesome if I also got Mustang out, you know, and then I'm just watching for her, which that feels really good to me. But the fact that there are cards that say, I'm going to make you discard a card, and then that's almost impossible for you to recover from that unless there's some very specific circumstances in the game. There's a mechanic at the end of the game where if you have more than 7 cards, it's minus 10 per, and that feels like almost like, why did you even put that in there to me? You know,
It doesn't happen. I don't think it's happened yet, right?
Nope.
Yeah, which is pretty wild. So there are elements where I can make you lose a card, and sometimes that means like, well, you're probably not going to win then because it's not likely that you're going to be able to not only recover that card but get more than that card.
Yeah, those cards are super impactful.
Totally, yeah. Those are the big ones for me. And then basing on kind of something that you said earlier, Wes, I feel like because you said whenever you played your game, there was a point where you're like, yeah, I'm pretty happy with my hand.
Yeah.
If that's like my first draw, and granted, there are several hundred cards in here, I'd say at least like 250 or something like that. If I draw and I'm like, yeah, with a couple alterations, I'm good with this hand. First of all, that's a really weird game for me because I'm just like, well, I'm good here actually. So I might play a couple of them and maybe I can get something better, but largely I'm going to be fine with that. Now, if the opposite is true for you and you're like, I don't know even where to start with this, that automatically gives me an enormous leg up, right? And you might be able to pull that back just by playing better than I can, and that's totally fine. I think when there comes like when the deck of cards is a mechanic in a game, there's always some kind of luck factor. But I can definitely see someone having a really bad game of this, and I can also see somebody having a really bad first game of this if that's the case. And I would hate for that to turn them off. You know what I mean?
I agree. Even our last game, Pate rolled the die, and I think he rolled discard or banish a card.
It's called banish, Jake.
And banish a card
man.
like 6 out of 7 times or something crazy. And so it's like the rest of us are scoring points.
Or it was scout.
Because most of my strategy was based on getting a new card and rolling the die and getting a resource that way, which it did not work.
It was just banish, and so it's like that can be. Not only do you have the deck mechanic, like a little bit of luck with what you get drawn, and then you also have the die mechanic where it's like even more luck, and so I agree.
The only other negative I was gonna say or critique would be kind of like the card turnover you were saying. Cards get buried very easily underneath, like very quickly too. It's just like whoop, and that Jupiter's full, and you have to find a card to like draw a card from another place to it so you can pick it up. And I don't feel like that happened super often in my hand. But I think that kind of like felt a little bit static at times. The board did. But it didn't hinder. I feel like this is definitely a game that needs more than one play in order to really get a grasp of like, what does this feel like as you're playing it?
Yeah.
You know? There were just like little elements of it throughout. I was like, this is cool. This is cool. I like this. This is cool. Yeah. But I think it can be overwhelming, I think, to start.
Yeah.
I think, anything, you have something that you want to add?
I just one more thing.
Go for it.
It's pretty slight. I don't want it to sound like I'm dumping on this game. I really like it. But there are 2 versions of this game. There's like a retail version, which has plastic things, and there's like a deluxe version that has metal versions of those plastic things. Either way, I feel like the production is really good, but functionally, in the deluxe edition especially, the metal cubes all have like a, not all of them, but there are several that have a similar tint to them, so sometimes it can be hard to differentiate.
Borderline indistinguishable.
Yeah. But I would say like the most egregious part, everybody has like a card tray where they can keep their hand in it, and these things like they fall over all the time. Like we had a running joke because you're gonna see everybody's hands because it just falls all the time.
Just put all the metal that you used in the cubes into those.
Well, another thing is the card trays don't fit all the cards.
Yeah.
It's
especially
not,
if you get more than 5.
It's not long enough for 5 even, and then if you get another card, so you can't ever see though. But I will say we played the regular edition because the retail version is the one Jamie sent us. And I'm glad that I have the collector's edition, I guess is what I would say. There are pitfalls of it, like gold and bronze are like, you can't tell the difference. Like it's insane. But the game trays, like insert is amazing for sorting all the pieces. The card tray for when you're playing is amazing.
And this one, it was a large handful of Ziploc bags.
Yeah.
Like
more than you need.
Yeah,
but
like,
they were
like
there.
10.
Yeah,
There's 10 more Ziplocs than
do we
you
know
need.
what this copy retails at? Do you know? Did you look that up?
Yo, I think it's really. I think it's like $30. Honestly.
Wow.
And for what you're getting here, like that's very
replayability is pretty high.
Yeah.
Because there's so many cards, so that's a downside. But it might make you want to see what the rest of the cards are, or I'm going to try to just like go for helium and see what happens. Yeah. But I think you got something else?
I was just gonna say, kind of off your point of like not really knowing what to do at the beginning of a game. One thing that's kind of interesting about that is you have to immediately quickly pick a path, and it requires you to think and make a decision pretty immediately. Yeah, which I think I liked, and
I bet you
seems
did.
Seems like it would have been something.
You did.
300 points. Yeah, I bet, you really enjoyed the scoring system. Yeah.
No, I
Those
mean
5 cards that
in
you
terms
drew
of
at the beginning of the game, and you just scouted the rest. You must have been real
I
pumped.
changed over 3 cards, I think, in my hand throughout the whole game. But I was going to say
deploy abilities that you use though.
Pretty
Just
good.
kidding, dude.
The other
320 points.
The other criticism I was going to say is some of the deploy abilities. I think 2 or 3 times I couldn't use it. I just had to put a card down
at least once or twice in the game.
Yep. So that felt a bit like kind of wasted my turn a little bit.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say about the thinking on your feet thing, it's seems like that's, and maybe that's not intentional. You guys can tell me, having read it, is that something that's relevant in the books for these characters, is to like be in situations where they have to do that, or no?
I would say a big theme of the first book specifically, and this is a really good job of incorporating characters throughout the first 5 novels, but the first book is a lot about adapting, and the big phrase is shifting the paradigm. Like that's so yeah.
So there, I think knowing the detail that Stonemaier puts into their games, that might have been part of the decision-making process in that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. How accurate are characters actually deployed on these places? Like, do characters from multiple color sects go to Mars in the book series? And are they, you know what I mean? Like, do they go with other colors, and are they actually on locations?
Yeah. Without going into spoilers, I guess. Yes, because it's a community. So really, I mean, they use a pyramid as the example, and the low colors are on the bottom and the gold's on the top.
Gotcha.
And so it's a community, because a gold would have a green come in and fix their computer.
Gotcha. Okay.
And a brown.
And the Institute is the school. Luna is the Earth's moon.
Right. Yeah.
Mars is Mars, obviously, and that's where a lot of the red colony lives. And then Jupiter is Jupiter, obviously, but it plays a bigger part in some other stuff. But so sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is abstract.
Deployed.
I guess a better question would be like, why are those 4 so impactful? Why are they the 4 locations?
Yeah. Well, largely in the book series, I mean, these are just 4 of like the populated planets or moons.
There's more.
Yeah, there's a lot more, but yeah, Mars is obviously very, very big because it's a planet, but in the book, it's important. The Institute is a school that they go to. It's
and that's
a significant
on Earth
location.
or no? That's a spoiler?
Yes, absolutely, for sure. 100%.
Let's just stop talking about it, but it's good.
Wow.
You should read it.
Okay.
Can I borrow it, Jake?
I'm reading it currently.
Dang it.
Yeah, you can borrow it. I'll just read my other copy. But I would say that the sky is the limit for this game. To wrap up, I think I'm excited at the possibility of other elements being added, like expansions.
Have they said anything about doing that?
No, but I don't know. That's what I'm hoping. I hope it sells well. I'm excited that it's in Target now. I did not know that, and so I hope it sells well. I hope that it gets well received, because I'd love to see you have 10 helium pieces, you can do something else because you have a large helium reserve, or your fleet is so large that you can go do this, or so I think there's a lot of other elements from the books and just in terms of gameplay. Your influence is so high that if you have a yellow that gives you the ability to take someone else's card, they can't say no. It's cool stuff like that.
That would be the way to do it. Definitely not to add cards, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, just different ways that what you're already doing can interact with other players. I think it'd be really cool.
Which Jamie usually makes. He's good about making expansions like that don't really alter the core puzzle of the game, but they just.
That's definitely how the Between Two Castles was.
Yeah.
It was the tiles. There was one new cool thing that you could play with your neighbors, but other than that, it was the same, which is cool. Yeah, I would say it's super enjoyable. It gets better every time I play it. I don't know. I'd say if we're doing it on a 10 scale, I would give it an 8. 8 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I'd give it an 8. I think you definitely don't have to be a fan of Red Rising to enjoy it at all. I think that's the big takeaway.
I would probably give it a 7, I think. 7. It's pretty good.
Hard to say just after one game, like I said, but probably in
10 out of 10.
7.5, 8.
312 out of 10, I guess.
320 is my rating.
320.
But no, I would say like 7.5, 8, somewhere in there. I enjoyed it.
I did too. Again, thanks, Jamie. We appreciate it. If you want to hear more about board games, we are always looking for new games to talk about. So if you have any suggestions, let us know. This is
Also, thank you, Nathan.
Yep.
Also, thank
thanks
you,
for having
Nathan.
me.
Thank you so much. Thanks. We're so happy to have you here. So,
It's like we're twisting Jake's arm to get him on the show.
thank you so much for listening and thank you for watching. This has been This Podcast Is Not For You. I am Jake.
I'm Peyton.
I'm Nathan.
Yes.
We are so happy
Yeah.
that you're here.
And I'm Wes.
Cut.